So you want to know the ins and outs of managing your money. Well, lucky for you, you're just in time for another episode of Master Your Finances with certified financial planner professional Kurt Baker. Kurt and his panel of experts are here for you and will cover topics from a legal and personal standpoint. They'll discuss tax efficiency, liability, owning, managing, and saving your money, and more. Master Your Finances is underwritten by Certified Wealth Management and Investment. Let's learn how we can better change our habits with Kurt Baker.
Good morning and welcome back to another edition of Master Your Finances, presented by Certified Wealth Management and Investment. I am Kurt Baker, a certified financial planner professional located in Princeton, New Jersey. I can be reached through our website, which is www.cwmi.us, or you can call me directly at 609-716-4700. This week, very pleased to have with us Jane Fearn-Zimmer, who is a shareholder in Flaster Greenberg. Dedicated her practice to serving clients in the areas of elder and disability law, special needs planning, asset protection, tax and estate planning, and estate administration. Jane, very pleased to have you on today. Thank you very much for coming on. I know we've had a lot going on over the last few months, and just from talking to other people I know that are helping out the population as far as legal side, a lot of people are getting really kind of focused on their planning and so forth. I'm just wondering what you've kind of been seeing since the beginning of the year, and then when the pandemic kind of hit. And so what have you kind of been seeing as far as your client base goes out there?
It has been a very, very busy time of year for us from January up to present. And I'm glad people are doing their documents because they really need to look at their finances. There have been so many legal changes and so many economic changes that it really is imperative to, look through all of that paperwork on your desk and make sure that your finances are in order, because we have an unprecedented element of uncertainty in our time that we have not seen before. So one of the things that I encourage people to do is, look at all of their assets, and a lot of your biggest asset is either your house or your retirement account. So I don't know if you're familiar with what's called the Secure Act, but that was new legislation that is now just about 9 months old, and we don't have the regulations yet, so we don't know exactly how it's going to play out. But the legislation was touted as a win for the taxpayers. It was, promoted as a law that will help people who are on the brink of retirement conserve their finances and help people who have already retired preserve everything that they've worked so many years for to save. And it would purport to do that by extending the age to take your minimum required distribution to age 72. And all of that is just great. And then we had a new law under the CARES Act that allows you, if you elect to not take your minimum required distribution this year because of COVID and everything that's going on. But what really did not get a lot of press, as far as I could see, was the negative aspects of the Secure Act on your household. And one of the way that this legislation is financially, fiscally neutral. So the legislature has to pay for itself. And the way it does that is by changing and eliminating, in most cases, the mechanism to defer taxation of your retirement accounts. You have a retirement account, and it is typically, unless it's a Roth IRA, I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about tax-qualified retirement accounts, which would be like individual retirement accounts, the traditional ones, and 401As, 401Ks, 403A and Bs, 457. Curtis, what am I forgetting? I'm sure that there are other types of them out there.
Right.
But basically, these are your qualified retirement accounts that are pregnant with untaxed income. And we used to, prior to the end of 2019, be able to defer the taxation of these accounts by naming a qualified designated beneficiary. And that person, if it was done right, whether it's to an individual person or to a trust, could possibly stretch out taking their distributions and stretch out the income tax that would result from the distributions over their own actuarial lifetime. Maybe you had a different result depending on how old the retiree was, who funded the account and when he died, and whether he or she was taking minimum distributions or not. But now that, you had, in theory, the ability to defer for years and years and years those distributions and the income on that. So the Secure Act has gotten rid of that scheme. And now the default setting is that you have to distribute out all the income in your retirement accounts, like if you're the qualified designated beneficiary, over a period of 10 years. And what they really don't tell you, here's the catch, is that you're not required to take any distribution in years 1 through 10. I'm sorry, 1 through 9, excuse me, which means that if you got to take it out in 10 years, everything comes out in one big ball of income in the 10th year. So if you have older trust documents that are drafted for retirement assets, those documents absolutely have to be updated, because they probably don't say that the trustee has the ability to consider the potential income tax results, especially under the Secure Act, in making a distribution. They probably say you can make a distribution for health, education, maintenance, support, or for special needs, but they absolutely need to be updated, or your beneficiaries are going to be, unexpectedly paying hundreds of thousands of dollars of income tax that they can legally avoid.
No, no, that's quite a change. I know we have these inherited IRAs that we've been used to, right? So if it doesn't go to your spouse, which is, that goes okay, no problem, right? But it's when it goes to like a son or daughter or somebody that's outside of your spouse, right? So that people need to be aware of that and plan for it, as you're pointing out, right?
Exactly. So the default setting now is completely different. You basically have to take all of your distributions over the 10-year period, unless you're a surviving spouse, unless you are a chronically ill individual or a disabled individual. And disabled means really disabled. So basically, you've had the Social Security Administration determine that you are entitled to SSI, supplemental security income, or SSD, or maybe Medicaid has determined you're disabled, or the state disability board has done so, or you have a chronic condition that is so serious that it limits you and you're unable to work more than $1,200, $1,300 a month in income because of that disability, and is expected to last for more than 1 year. So, disabled under the Secure Act means very disabled. And I think that's, those are the exceptions. So, you have to start looking at your retirement assets and, thinking, okay, do I have a special needs child with an existing trust? Do I need to tweak that trust and make it compliant with the Secure Act so that the trustee can distribute the income to the trust, to the child, and take income tax consequences into consideration? Yes, there's still an exception in the Secure Act, but you still need to update your trust documents. And because your distribution standard now is a little bit different, you need a different one. And you need to look at how you're funding your estate plan, because now all these people that were going to have retirement accounts funding their estate plan, they may want to consider buying life insurance to offset the income tax bite that is otherwise going to happen, because their beneficiaries are going to have to take their distributions over a period of 10 years now and not their lifetimes. So life insurance is huge, and updating your documents is very critically important.
No, that's very good advice. And as I'm sure you're aware, when you start having to implement some type of a life insurance strategy, the sooner you do this, the better. And obviously, from a tax standpoint, it's always wise to do things earlier rather than later. But any of these types of things that you're doing as far as estate planning, it's really important to do them early, because circumstances do change, where something you could do today, you might not be able to do next week, next month, next year. So once you're aware of it, it's really kind of critical to get on board and start doing that. And from what you're telling me, it sounds like a lot of your clients, or you're reaching out to your clients and making sure that you're getting all the documentation updated and making sure the strategies are tweaked to kind of comply with the new tax situation, right? Based on what their situation is.
We're encouraging them to come in to meet via Zoom. We can do a lot remotely. You don't necessarily have to physically come in the office to execute your documents. What we can do is there's a remote notarization law, which is in effect in New Jersey throughout the public health emergency, which Governor Murphy has proclaimed. And I can, if I draft my documents with the correct provisions in the notarial clause, I can meet with you via Zoom, or my paralegal can meet with you via Zoom. She's better because she's free, and she will witness your signature. And we have the person, the testator who's signing their documents, or the settlor, the trustee, sit in a picture window right in front of the window, and then maybe we have two witnesses outside, and we can see them through the window, and they're 6 feet apart. Maybe one's in a car, and we can see all of them. We all interact via Zoom, and boom, 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 you have documents. And so it's important to, not defer and not worry about how we're going to do this during the COVID pandemic, because, your attorneys, the attorney that you work with, they're professionals, and there's a solution for everything. For every challenge.
Wow, that's fantastic, Jane. I appreciate you going over that. We got to take a quick break. You're listening to Master Your Finances. We'll be right back.
This is Master Your Finances with Kurt Baker, Certified Financial Planner Professional. Learn about tax efficiency, liability, owning, managing, and saving your money, and more from Kurt and his experienced panel of guests. Master Your Finances is underwritten by Certified Wealth Management and Investment.
All right, welcome back. You're listening to Master Your Finance. I'm Kurt Baker here with Jane Fearn-Zimmer, and we've been talking about estate planning, some of the things that have been going on since the pandemic hit. People have a little bit of time to think about some things, and I know estate planning people have been busy, and it's good you're busy because there's a lot that needs to happen with some of the things that are coming out that we need to actually deal with, right? So you've got the Secure Act, so there's some changes that happened there, and the way that assets, retirement assets like IRAs and so forth, the distribution is different, the taxation is different, so it's very important to update your trust documents and things like that and get them up to date. And I know there's a lot of other planning that's going on. So that's really what you and I both kind of are in line with, is that it's ideal really to plan ahead for the things that may happen, and hopefully they never do. But in case they do happen, at least you've got best practices in place so you can deal with them in the best way possible. And the legal aspect or the financial aspect is not quite as burdensome, and you can kind of focus on the actual event from a human standpoint, as opposed to these other issues which have to be done. And it's great to get that structure in place ahead of time. So what other things are you dealing with as far as like that pre-planning aspect, kind of getting everybody where they really kind of should be legally right now?
So people really fall into different situations. You have, people that have really not suffered economically during this pandemic, and, they need to make sure that they have peace of mind, that their I's are dotted, that their T's are crossed, that they have the right documents in place, and that their beneficiary designations are done correctly, that their trusts are funded, that they have the right life insurance, and that all of this estate plan is going to work. So, and you have to work with people like Curtis to make sure that what you worked hard for all your life is going to end up the way that you want it to, and that you understand your documents. You should never ever sign a document unless you understand it. So one of the things that I do with my clients now and always really is to sit down and talk about what are their goals. And a lot of people are charitably inclined. There are people that are very, very successful, even in this day and age, and they're looking for a way maybe to assist a nonprofit, which are really terribly hard hit because of the change in the income tax laws a couple years ago, from the itemized deduction to the standard deduction, whereby now your standard deduction is so relatively high, or so comparatively high, that it makes sense not to itemize, because you're probably not going to have a higher deduction if you itemize than your standard deduction. So now all of these nonprofit companies or entities, that were going to be funded by, a series of annual contributions, proof that's gone away, how do you help them? One of the opportunities that if you're in a higher income strata is if you want to reduce your taxable income and you're under 70 and a half, you could make a charitable rollover and you could roll over, instead of taking your required minimum distributions, you can take it but earmark it to go directly to the charity so that it's not going to you. And one of the nice things about that is that you can benefit the nonprofit or the charity, and it also does not invade your 1 year rollover per calendar year rule. In 2014, there was a tax case that came out, and nobody expected it. It was called the Bobro case, and basically the IRS introduced a new policy at that point. Now it is in a regulation under, I think it's IRC 408. It's one of the 408 regs. And it basically changed the prior policy and practice that you could pretty much use your IRA as a financial planning tool and take money out of your IRA and then put it back within another IRA within 60 days, and you're okay. And you could do that. There was no published limitation on the number of times per year that you could do it prior to 2014. So if you wanted to, if you were sick of your custodian, you're tired of dealing with, bank X that has fees and you don't want to deal with them anymore, or bank, custodian, whatever has a better rate, and you're not making a custodian to custodian transfer, or maybe you need a short-term loan and you don't want to pay bank rates. Prior to 2014 and this Bobro decision, you could take the money out of your IRA multiple times in 1 calendar year and put it back within 60 days. And now you can't do that. Under Bobro, there's a one, IRA rollover per calendar year. And that's, that is not a custodian to custodian transfer. It's only when you're actually receiving the money and then putting it back, it's got to be within the 60 days. And the nice thing about the charitable rollover strategy is it doesn't invade your one free bite at the apple. So that's a great option for people that are in those income brackets that want to reduce it and care to benefit a charity. Another thing that I'm encouraging clients to do always is to buy life insurance and long-term care insurance. Life insurance is a great way to fund an inheritance. If you have a family business and you have one kid who's working in the business, and maybe you have other kids that are not involved in the business, and the business is not that liquid, if Johnny gets the business, Susie and Mary are going to be really upset. And, you don't want your family to have discord because Johnny doesn't have the cash to pay him out. So, go to Curtis Baker and talk about your life insurance needs. That's a big thing. If you have a special needs child, particularly if you're going through a divorce and you know that kid is never going to be able to work and you want that child to be taken care of, one strategy would be to fund a special needs trust with or an irrevocable life insurance trust with special needs provisions, and it's got to be very carefully crafted because it's an interesting mixture of policies here. Do that, and your child will be able to be taken care of comfortably, even if you're no longer in the picture. So that's another option. We are looking now at a lot of people who are, maybe who haven't planned, and they're just being hit by this crisis, and it's terrible. And it's like the rug is being pulled out from under them. So if, God forbid, you suddenly find yourself without your usual income stream from employment, there are a number of things that you really have to do. And I would encourage you to work with your financial advisor to see if you have the liquidity. Is this a good year to do a Roth IRA conversion? Because now your income might potentially be in a lower bracket than you were anticipating, and it's going to go up next year. All of this will pass away. it's not permanent, I think. I think Spanish flu is about 2 years. And at some point, we're going to be cycling through this and life is going to be good again. And so you may, very reasonably find yourself in a much higher income bracket than you were in 2020. And this might be a great time to do a Roth conversion. And if you can't, if for some reason you do it, you're not necessarily locked in. I think you have a 60-day period to undo it. So, that's an opportunity that economically you might not have in the future because you may be in a higher bracket and you can give your beneficiaries tax-free dollars. Also, if, God forbid, you have a wealthy, parent or an elderly person who is probably looking at a terminal situation and they're either competent or you have a power of attorney and they are so inclined, do you want to do a Roth conversion for those people? Because if they have a future estate that is filled with retirement accounts, that those accounts are pregnant with untaxed income. And if it's not structured right, the beneficiary now is going to have to be stuck paying the tax. Mm-hmm. So potentially do a Roth conversion and pay the tax, offset it with your medical expenses that the senior has, and maybe do better. You really have to crunch the numbers than if you just did nothing and let the retirement accounts go into the estate. So that's something you really have to look at if you want to do a deathbed Roth conversion. I know it sounds really tacky. It's not what you want to think about when you're with your loved ones, but you have to be practical too. So that's
no, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, you covered a lot here, and I know a lot of this comes down to like having these conversations with your loved ones and really kind of understanding what those funds are going to be used for that next generation to make sure you put them in the right format so that they can transfer down. And as you stated, the Roth has the great advantage of once it's converted, there's no tax. Of course, you pay a tax on the conversion, but now the asset can be transferred on, and it's more favorable at that point. Especially if you have outside assets that can help cover those taxes. And that's really nice because sometimes you can keep the corpus of that IRA or a lot of that IRA right there and really use some of the, the non-qualified funds to kind of cover some of those expenses. So no, that's great. That's great advice. And I know another thing you mentioned I just want to talk real quickly, but we're going to go on a break. But the insurance is really important, especially in family businesses, because if you start really talking to those who are going to inherit the business, I know many people are surprised to find out who's actually interested in the business and who really doesn't want a whole lot to do with it. So those conversations are really critical to have before there is an event and somebody passes and now everybody's trying to decide what to do. Much better to have those conversations way in advance. So everybody kind of knows exactly who's going to run it, how it's all going to transfer. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Master Your Finances. We'll be right back.
This is Master Your Finances with Kurt Baker, Certified Financial Planner Professional. Learn about tax efficiency, liability, owning, managing, and saving your money, and more from Kurt and his experienced panel of guests. Master Your Finances is underwritten by Certified Wealth Management and Investment.
Welcome back. You're listening to Master Your Finances. I'm Kurt Baker here with Jane Fearn-Zimmer, and we are talking about some of the great estate planning concepts that you're working on, especially during the pandemic, and kind of people are getting a moment to kind of sit back and really focus on what they should be doing. And this is always an issue that we always talk about, and I know it's even more so now with all the changes that are going on, both from a financial standpoint and some of the laws that are changing. But planning, reviewing your estate plan is something that everybody should be doing periodically. This is really a critical year to do it, I think, right? If you haven't done it for a while, you definitely need to sit down and make sure it's all in order. I know some people pull things offline, and the problem with that is, New Jersey and a lot of the states like New Jersey, there's a lot of nuances that you need to be aware of, and just pulling off a boilerplate probably is not going to meet your needs in most cases. So be really cautious about that. So what are your thoughts about what people should be doing right now and making sure their estate plan documents are in good shape?
Just make sure that you're clear about your intentions and that your estate plan is set up in a way that it's going to accomplish those intentions. One of the most common situations that I see, and it's very easily preventable, is where you have a house in an estate, and an elderly person or somebody who is ill was living in the house, and there are deferred maintenance issues. And so now you have this house, and it's probably the individual's biggest asset, and they may have financial accounts, but maybe those accounts have a beneficiary designation. And so maybe you have a small bank account and the house going into the probate estate. So if you want your executor to have fond memories of you after you've passed, you'd better make sure your estate plan works in a manner that will facilitate the executor's ability to sell the house. And they might need to fix the house up in order to do that. Particularly in this market, we're seeing a massive shift in the real estate market, and a lot of people are moving from the city to the suburbs, and a lot of people are moving from the suburbs into the country. And now more than ever, it's important to just pull out the old estate plan, dust it off, and make sure it's going to work like you expect it to. Because if your executor can't sell the house because there is a problem with it, or they can't pay the water bills and they've got a dip in their pocket to pay, for the sprinkler and the gas and the electric and all of that, they're going to be very resentful. And that's not, you want to give them peace of mind.
Yeah, and
So,
another important aspect of that, of course, we all know if a house is in good shape and nice, ready to move in, you're going to get a significantly higher price than one where somebody's going to have to come in and literally renovate the home before they can really move into it. Your market opens up significantly if they can move in the next day, as opposed to close and spend the next 2 or 3 months readying it so they can move in. That affects the dollar amount. I know you're aware of this, and I am, is when you have an estate sale, there's some people that they look for these estate sales because they know they're hard to begin with, because you have multiple sellers sometimes that have to sign off on it. And the easier you make the product, the house, to get to sell, the much more likely you're going to have a successful sale and a price, because they'll like dispute like what the price is even, right? So like one of the heirs will say, well, I think it should be X. The other was like, well, it's not worth that because it needs work, and they just won't sign off. So then you end up in this vicious cycle of not being able to get everybody to even agree to the sale, and then you lose value even there, right?
That's one of the reasons why you want to have a valid will in place, is that you don't have a fight between the heirs as to what the price of the house is, who's going to do what, and you have somebody authorized and in the driver's seat to actually do the work that needs to be done to sell the house and to sit at the closing table and to sign the documents. Otherwise, you're in a position of having to go to court and get somebody else appointed. And now more than ever, like the New Jersey judges are wonderful. We have a very highly regarded judiciary, but they are just overwhelmed. They have half the resources in terms of time and money to do things, and it takes twice as long because of the technology issues. They can't, it takes forever to get everybody into the Zoom court session. And, now you've got to go to court to get somebody appointed when you could have just written a will. Really simple solution, very cost effective compared to what you could spend in your estate if you didn't do it. So I would encourage you to just dust off the old estate plan and just check it over. Make sure it still works. But there's a vast category of people that didn't plan. And, they're now really hard hit. So, I'm seeing a lot of people who are at home and they're afraid to go to the hospital or to the urgent care clinic because of COVID-19. And, what do you do? I'm seeing people that are laid off, and they may or may not be aware that they have a special enrollment period if they're of age to get Medicare. And they were previously covered by a employer health plan. They've got a finite period of time to cover, to elect and opt into Medicare A and B and D for your prescription drugs. And if you don't do that at the appropriate time, there's a penalty. But if the really bad situation is that if you don't do that at the appropriate time, And maybe you're disabled and your insurance company is paying your premiums. Now you got coordination of coverage issues, and you may find that even though your health insurance company is paying your employer is paying your premiums, you may have your claims denied because you don't meet the criteria of an employee. So it really makes sense to sit down. Did I say that clearly? Is that?
Yes, right. Yeah, we want to make sure your all your insurance fits together properly, right? So you want to make sure.
Exactly.
Yep.
And it may not be what you think it is. So I would completely recommend that you sit down again with Curtis or somebody like him, and go over the separation package if there's a disability issue, and just make sure that all your ducks are in a row like you think they are. For people who need care in a crisis situation, it's really another ball of wax. There are tons of people now who maybe are going into the hospital and they come out, they're generally deconditioned, or they've had some sort of health issue and they're going into a long-term care situation and they hadn't planned for it. And the good news is that particularly if you're married, there's an awful lot you can do to protect your finances and to protect the home and preserve the ability of the healthy spouse to stay at home. So we can talk about those more after the break.
No, that's good. No, I know that we we want to make sure that the spouse is taken care of. So we have just another minute or two, but right. So I think one of the concerns people have sometimes is when one person has to go. Well, two things. One, you should plan ahead for the long-term situation because most couples will have at least one of you will need a long-term care facility at some point in your life. So whether or not you self-fund that or whether you use long-term care insurance is one conversation, but there's so many tax benefits to long-term care insurance. I'm finding that most people, even if they have the assets, they end up putting into some kind of strategy that involves at least partially using the insurance because it is very favorable from a tax standpoint. And then if you haven't planned for it, that's the other area that you touched on briefly there is you don't want to get into a crisis situation because then you're going to miss a lot of the choices you might have normally been able to have. When you're planning ahead, you can literally sit down and say, here's the kind of facility I'd like to go into because there's multiple types of facilities out there. And I think now more than ever, even, given that we had the crisis with the pandemic, I think people are paying even more attention to what would happen if I had to go into one of the facilities. How do I make sure I'm safe? My loved one is safe if I'm putting them in there, and how are they taken care of? And what's the communication going to be like, right? Because that's changed.
Right.
A lot of things have changed even in the facilities themselves, and they're traditionally set up to be kind of a neighborhood networking, keeping people socially active type situations. But when you're dealing with a pandemic, you have to be separated to some degree, just purely from a health standpoint. So people are kind of looking at things at a slightly different viewpoint than they might have been doing even a few months ago, I think. So, I mean, what are you seeing about that?
So you hit a couple of really important points. And one is that it's always, 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 if you can qualify for it, a good idea to seriously consider buying long-term care insurance. In nearly all of the cases, it's much more cost effective than self-funding your own retirement in a nursing home at $14,000 a month. It's always better to pay for your care with somebody else's money, right? So long-term care insurance gives you a way to do that. It is very tax favored, and I think that if I were to get into the weeds of that, it would be confusing in the short time that we have left, and it would certainly bore you. And so if you go to janefzimmer.com, I have a blog, and on my blog page, there is a very comprehensive long-term care insurance worksheet, and it basically gives 6 or 7 scenarios of different strategies of how you can pay for long-term care insurance using your retirement minimum required distributions, how it can help, and who it benefits. So I have some families look at their parents and they realize, particularly if the parent was divorced and remained single and maybe devoted his or her life to the kids, they look at their parents and realize that as much as they love mommy or daddy, that they're a walking, huge heart and walking financial nightmare. And the kids get together and buy a long-term care insurance policy for mommy or daddy because the kids know that if they don't, it's going to be a whole lot more expensive, in terms of their
Yeah, no,
lifestyle and
yeah,
their
no, that's great.
finances to mom or dad at home or
No,
in a
that's great
nursing home.
advice, and that's definitely part of the family planning aspect. Is how you're going to take care of mom or dad, and if something were to happen. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Master Your Finances. We're going to be right back.
This is Master Your Finances with Kurt Baker, Certified Financial Planner Professional. Learn about tax efficiency, liability, owning, managing, and saving your money, and more from Kurt and his experienced panel of guests. Master Your Finances is underwritten by Certified Wealth Management and Investment.
Welcome back. You're listening to Master Your Finance. I'm Kurt Baker here with Jane Fearn-Zimmer, and we've been talking about planning. I guess late we broke off with a little bit of the long-term care insurance planning, which is really kind of a family planning aspect because your parents are going to get older, you're going to get older, and somebody needs to manage that. And so if you do it correctly, you'll have the budget, and somebody will have a nice retirement. And even if they have to go into a long-term care facility, it'll be something that's appropriate for them. And it definitely takes the stress off the family, because if parents are expecting their kids to take care of them, you don't want them to be your caretaker and your child. You'd much rather they could be your child and come and visit you and enjoy you, as opposed to having to take care of you all the time. I know I've heard many stories about where it's significantly better relationship when they're actually able to spend time getting to know their parents more and more, as opposed to simply coming in to help them from a medical standpoint. I know that when we plan, and fortunately, hopefully our clients have all done that, and they have a pretty good retirement if they have a plan in place. But as we know, sometimes people don't plan, and you hear these stories about, a loved one, their father falls and now has to be put into a long-term care facility, and there's no plan, there's no assets, there's no idea where they're going to go or how they're going to do it. So what happens in those search situations? Not ideal, but there are things that people can do, correct?
Absolutely. So it's important for the bottom line, as well as to make sure that your loved one gets the best care possible, that you get a seasoned elder law attorney in as possible. So basically, you want to look for somebody who devotes their practice to elder care planning, elder law, and these are typically people who are a member of the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. That's like the Good Housekeeping Seal of Approval, or they might be leaders in the local bar association. Their websites, you can tell that they know what they're doing. And, it's just too complex an area to go to somebody who doesn't deal with this every single day. So you want to get the elder law attorney involved as soon as possible, because they can help you. They can help make sure that your parent has had a 3-day qualifying stay, which is important in order to get Medicare dollars to pay for your care. If I walked down the street and I asked 10 people, hey, if you need nursing home care, how are you going to pay for it? I would, I would be astounded if at least 7 of them didn't tell me that Medicare was going to pay for it. And that really is a misnomer. Medicare, C-A-R-E, is a health program, and it basically was put into place in 1965 by President Johnson to provide a safety net for healthcare. And it does pay for a little bit of long-term care some of the time, but only if you qualify for it. And you have to have a 3-day qualifying stay. And if you are admitted into a long-term care facility within 30 days of a 3-day qualifying stay, then Medicare will pay for up to 100 days of nursing home care. So it really is a wonderful source of key money. There's a copay, there are other nuances. I don't want to get in the weeds, but basically look out for the situation where you have somebody in the hospital, but they are not actually on inpatient status. So if you have that problem, you're going to get cheated out of your Medicare dollars if you would be otherwise eligible for Medicare. And your local elder law attorney can advocate that you'll be immediately put on inpatient status so that you get your stay. That can save you hundreds, tens of thousands of dollars. The other thing an elder law attorney can do is assist the discharge planner, who I can pretty much guarantee you has many, many other clients besides your loved ones to place in a very short period of time. And so he or she is probably going to be inclined, unless you provide them with other resources, to set them to the easiest placement, which may not be the place where your parent has the best fit. So the elder law attorney can help you navigate the long-term care continuum quickly and figure out what are the good facilities in your area, what is economically feasible, where does your parent belong on the care continuum or your loved one, and do you have a realistic option of getting in there? If you do, they can help you review the admissions agreement, because what you don't want to do is sign as responsible party for your parents' assisted living bill. And in New Jersey, with respect to assisted living, you could be held responsible for your parents' bills if you agree to it. So, do you really want to pay voluntarily out of your pocket between $4,500 and $7,000, maybe $7,500 per month for your parent for the rest of their life? Probably not. So, if you have an elder law attorney, you can have them review the admissions agreement and protect your bottom line. Another thing that you can do is to work with an elder law attorney if you think your parent or loved one will need care soon, to make sure that they have a power of attorney that will allow you to assist them and will have provisions that will protect them. You want to be careful to have a provision in there that you are not authorized to agree to binding arbitration involving a long-term care facility on your parent's claim, because what if they, fall and break their hip, and or there's something horrible happens, and now you've gone and signed the admissions agreement because you didn't go to an attorney and you didn't review it and you didn't have the right power of attorney, and now you're in a position where your parent's claim is arbitrated, which means that you're going to be paying for 3 different arbitrators who pretty much have been hand selected by the nursing home or the admissions facility, whatever it is. I'd much rather be in front of a jury in that case. So, you don't know what you don't know, and these are all things that an elder law attorney can help you. And this way you can just be the kid or the wife or the husband and not the heavy lifter. They can help you get a Medicaid application together quickly. They can help you address if there were gifts. I see a lot of parents who have given economic support to their kids over the years, and all of a sudden they're in crisis and they need to go into long-term care. And how do we address the gifts? And the good news is that depending on the assets, if you have, more than maybe $40,000, $50,000, there's probably some crisis planning we can do.
Yeah, that's all great advice. And just you want to recap the difference between the Medicare and the Medicaid, because sometimes people don't understand what the differences are. Just real quickly.
So Medicare is that short-term health program, and it's the alphabet soup. It's got A, which is hospital. It's got Part B, which is your long-term care facility, or you can have your Medicare B in the home. You can get Medicare to pay for some limited home care and therapies like physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy in your home. And there's D, which is the prescription drug plans, and there are other, there's F, there's all sorts of alphabetical options for Medicare, and that's your short-term health insurance coverage. Medicaid is a public benefits program that provides long-term health care, provides health care for poor people. Those are people with low income and low assets. And it also can provide, through the New Jersey Family Care Program, financing for insurance benefit that if you don't have access to comparable coverage through an employer or other situation, if you can't buy it on the marketplace, New Jersey Family Care, if you're below certain income limits, it can provide health insurance coverage for you. It is not asset-based. So you could live in a theoretically $1 million house, and if now you're jobless because of COVID-19, you can get health insurance in place because of your income. You would now qualify for the income limits for New Jersey family care. So again,
Yes.
an elder law attorney that works with these programs can help you sort through that. So Medicaid is not an open spigot. Medicaid is the nursing home financing program. It can also pay for benefits in your home. And it's not an open spigot. It's always the payer of last resort, which means if you've got some other way to pay for your care, then Medicaid would never pay. So putting together a Medicaid application is a complicated process, and there's a 5-year look back period. You look back 5 years from the date of the first Medicaid application to see if there were any gifts that you did not receive fair market value for. And if there were, Medicaid is going to impose what's called a penalty period, and it will deny funding for a period of care, funding for like institutional care, so like care in a facility. For a period of time, that care will be denied through Medicaid, commensurate with the amount of the gift that was made within that 5-year look back period. So why am I going on and on about this? What I want you, the takeaway is that it's important to make sure that if you do need Medicaid in the future, that you don't just jump the gun and file it before you really need it, because that first Medicaid application is going to trigger the 5-year look back period, even if you're applying in, for Medicaid 5 years in the future. Now you've made it a 10-year look back period, and you didn't mean to. So there are some very negative, harsh cases out there, and so it's important to protect your finances by going to somebody that knows this, because they do it every day. There are big changes in the New York Medicaid home care program, I believe in October. You right now you have the ability to make gifts if you're going to receive care in the home, and there's no penalty period, there's no look back. But if you wait until October to do that for Medicaid home care, that system is going to change. And so it's very important to work with a licensed New York attorney to review your position, review your strategies, your affairs, and your financial and your physical condition, and see if there's something you should be doing right now to protect yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all very great. I mean, it's excellent information, and I know. Again, this all gets back to planning. Whether you're planning ahead of time, do it well, or if you're in a crisis, especially the Medicaid application, I know is very complicated, and to get the most benefit, you really need some professional help. I just want to touch on one little subject quickly before we break. But I know that with the COVID, I think we've seen significant increases in the psychiatric issues that have been going on out there. So what have you been seeing, and what are people kind of doing to help to deal with that, so to speak?
So that's exactly right. With the stress of the COVID situation, people are very vulnerable, even more so than they normally would be. And I'm seeing an increase in psychiatric emergency admissions. And so in New Jersey, it's very important to be aware of the system and to reach out to a seasoned counsel, somebody who specializes in this area and actively does it, very frequently, and gets their hands dirty and helps the clients. A lot of people do guardianship, but not too many people do hands-on involuntary commitment type work. It's a very specialized area. And what you don't know is that, you can be involuntarily committed if you express an intent, with a ideation, with a plan to either hurt yourself or somebody else. And, now maybe you were just venting. Oh, I can't take it anymore. I'm going to do blah, blah, blah. And you're in the hospital and you're being interviewed by the social workers, and they have specific regulations that they are required to follow. They have a specific procedure. And if they don't follow that procedure, there may be a loophole, and you may not necessarily, you can potentially be held liable for part of the cost of your care if you are sent to a place like Carrier Clinic or Northbrook for an involuntary commitment. Now the the public assessor's office has got to figure out what portion of that you're going to pay and what portion the state's going to pay. And so there are very specific regulations that govern the psychiatric emergency admissions procedure.
Mhm.
And somebody who does this every day can tell you whether or not those procedures have been followed. I also see people who, maybe particularly students, like graduate students, they're just overwhelmed now, or college students. They're overwhelmed with the COVID issues, and they're they're expressing their distress very naturally, very understandably, and they're getting caught up in this involuntary commitment web. And because of what they've expressed, because of the feelings and the ideation that maybe they have vented, they're now having hospital stays. And it's important to be aware and speak with somebody who can tell you, what your rights are when a voluntary but how long you can be held involuntarily, and how long you have before they can give you a hearing.
No,
So
Jane, that's great. Yeah, excellent advice. I know we're running a little bit long, so I don't want to, but yeah, that's been fantastic. So all of these different situations, it's really critical, and I know you've been pointing this out in various aspects, regardless of whether it's like planning ahead and doing it correctly, or whether there's a crisis involved, a psychiatric event. All of these things is some very specific nuances out there, and you need to be really aware of them, having experts involved to make sure that you get the proper care and that you're not paying any more than you absolutely have to pay. It's critical to get the experts involved when some of these things occur. You've been listening to Master Your Finances. You can reach us by going to masteryourfinances.us and listen to this podcast and all of them and subscribe there. And remember, together we can master your finances so you can enjoy financial peace of mind.
That was this week's episode of Master Your Finances with Kurt Baker, Certified Financial Planner Professional. Tune in every Sunday at 9 a.m. to expand your knowledge in building and managing your wealth. Missed an episode? No worries. You can subscribe to a free weekly episode of Master Your Finances to listen to on your favorite podcasting platform. Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, whatever. Master Your Finances is underwritten by Certified Wealth Management and Investment. Only on 1077 The Bronx.